All right, hi folks. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, and welcome to the discussion on tablet monetization. So we have 4 fantastic panelists for you, representing the spectrum from app developers through to advertising networks. And my name is Joe Whiteman. I work for Fixu. Fixu is a user acquisition platform for mobile and tablet applications. But obviously that's enough about me. So I'm going to hand over to the panel and ask each of one to give them, first of all, give us a quick introduction to yourselves. And then, maybe in the interest of getting to know each other, maybe you'd share with us, what's the best purchase that you've ever made on a tablet?
Yeah, I guess I'll kick this off. My name's Dave Kirby. I'm with Flipside 5. And we are an iOS game manufacturer. Best, thanks. This is one of our fans. I didn't pay him to. Maybe talk a little bit about our portfolio. We have about 23 SKUs in the App Store, and we've been in the business since 2007. Actually, pre-Open SDK for iOS, we had 3 very popular web games back when that's all you could do on iOS was have a web game, and Apple had its own web game store on their website. And we started there, and then we had 3 games or so available day 1 of the App Store. October 14th, 2008. I looked that up this morning just to be. That was the launch date of Apple's App Store. Sorry, thanks. And the best purchase I ever made on a tablet, that's a good question. I was debating that when I knew that would be the app I use the most, literally on a daily basis, is Pulse. And it's just so beautifully designed. And I was one of the unfortunate souls who paid $2.99 for it. Now it's free, because I bought it like the first day. That is probably the most useful tablet app I own.
All right, thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Drew Onifer from National Geographic. I run our apps and mobile group. We've put about 40 apps in the App Store. We're probably down to about 30. We've taken some down. Our main magazine app, we believe, has the single most digital subscriptions. We should hit about 300,000 by the end of the year. We have a reference app that for cartography that's been a consistent top grossing, top paid in the reference category. And this past year we won an Apple Design Award for an iPhone app on national parks. And as far as, what was it, favorite?
Best purchase.
Best purchase. Yeah, so, I was thinking about this. It's kind of pedestrian, but I'm going to have to say my Kindle app, and the reason being is at the beginning of the year I set a goal for myself to read 30 books, which I had no idea whether that was high or low or not, but I ended up hitting 30 this past month because I went on vacation and probably read like 5 on vacation. And I just did the math on that. There's probably mostly front list titles. So I've spent about $360 with Amazon on that. And so much of it, I think, is the convenience factor of it. The fact that if I bought those in hardcovers, it'd probably be a stack about this high. And I never would have brought all of them on, I never would have brought 5 books with me on vacation. I probably never would have discovered the next book I wanted to buy. And I'm one of those people that will, if I have 5 minutes, also read it on my phone. And then when you go from your phone back to the thing, you have it synchronized. And the Kindle app is backlit, so you can read in the middle of the night. So anyway, that's my best purchase.
Okay, good to know you've got some money in this game. That's great.
Is this on? Okay, great. Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Brown. I'm from Millennial Media. We're the leading independent mobile advertising and data platform. So headquartered up in Baltimore, we were founded in 2006 and just went public earlier this year in March. My job is focused on helping mobile application developers and publishers monetize their applications through advertising. So we work with several premium brand and performance advertisers to bring their marketing message onto mobile and help developers make money by selling inventory inside their apps. I took a little bit different spin on this too. I actually went back and looked at my Amazon shopping cart history, and it's a tie for me. The best purchases I made were these Bic pens that I can only seem to get on Amazon for some reason. I don't know why, but I love them. And I bought a toilet on Amazon earlier this year. Believe it or not, they sell toilets.
Hi, I'm John Schmidt from Inventing Mostly. I usually describe my job as an innovation consultant, but I'm really more of a rodeo clown for bad ideas. I've been doing a lot to help people approach mobile with product strategy, technology strategy, etc. Either because they want to protect themselves from disruption or they want to disrupt. So I can kind of I can sell ammunition to both sides, if you will. I'm going to put another spin on it too. I think the purchase which I've learned the most from is actually Talking Tom. And if those of you aren't familiar, Talking Tom is it's sort of a game interactive persona for kids. He first came into my life through an iPad that I introduced to my domestic environment. My daughter got onto this, and I thought, okay, it's cool. You talk, and the cat does stuff, and it's kind of goofy. But once you purchase Talking Tom and put that on your tablet, he has all these friends. There's Gina the giraffe, for example, and these push notifications just bombard your device until you're forced to realize that you can't just have one tablet and share it across the whole family. You need to have at least one tablet for everyone. So to me, it was kind of an introduction to how viral these things can be, but also just how personalized tablets have become as well, and then how individual our usage of them is.
Did you discover Talking Tom, or did your daughter discover it?
No, she came across it on her own. She was probably just watching Hello Kitty videos on YouTube. Unsupervised internet surfing for a 6-year-old. Yeah, I know. But and then Talking Tom got in there, and before you know it, him and all his friends were just the thing wouldn't stop. And almost like if it was an old-fashioned device, you would want to rip the battery out or something. But there's just almost no way to stop Talking Tom.
So tell us, how much money did you spend in total on it?
Well, I guess I'd have to count the purchase of additional tablets because, and so, what starts off as a $199, and then, he makes like fart sounds, and that's an extra $2. So, before you know it, it gets pretty expensive.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you very much for the introductions. That's a great start. So maybe you want to get this discussion going with a little bit of a chat about the basics of monetization. So when we actually talk about monetization, what are kind of the different components of the equation that we need to think about? Is it just revenues? Is it costs? Is there something else involved? Does anybody want to start us off with that?
I can start. I think, the first thing that you really need to start with is what is the problem you're trying to solve, right? So, what is your app going to do, and what unmet need or whatever it's going to solve for the customer, and then from there, is there a willingness to pay? So that's going to drive, what you're going to build. From there, then you're off and really everything from design cost to development cost to testing cost to, in our case, content cost. Everything from National Geographic resizing photos to getting different video to marketing costs that you might have to it, and staff costs. So I think that's on the cost side. There's a lot of different components there.
And do you think they vary based on the monetization kind of approach that you choose?
Definitely. I mean, you mentioned Pulse earlier. I mean, that's a huge challenge for media companies, is to get people to pay for content. When I look across the media spectrum there, especially for content that is so disposable, things like news, that there's probably 7 or 8 different outlets that you may be able to get that news from on a daily basis. It's really, really difficult to, I mean, you can see it with newspapers. So having the content that's more exclusive may allow you to drive it, spend more on it, things like that. Another thing that then on the revenue side that we've been able to do as a known brand is sponsorships. So what I always like to do and get my product managers is like, let's find a sponsor to pay for the development of the app, and then we'll also worry about additional monetization models with the users.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting point, because sometimes when we talk about monetization, we do just think of it in terms of, how do we make revenue out of the app? How do we get people to pay for stuff? But actually, on the back end, there's a whole bunch of costs which actually kind of dovetail with the monetization route. So, just a good thing to think about. But certainly, just focusing on the revenue side of things, I'm sure all you guys have got different experiences. I'd love to hear kind of all the different ways all the different mechanisms that have been used in the past to sort of try and monetize the apps or the sites, or really the tablet device as a whole. So, John, go ahead.
I don't have an MBA, so I'll just say that in interest of full disclosure. I have occasionally impersonated an MBA on TV. And one of the things that I was told is important to say, you really want to be focused on your customer, and your customer is the person that pays you. So you need to keep absolute focus on the person that pays you. Now, if somebody is paying for your content directly or your service directly, that's great. You focus on them. But a lot of times, you're creating content for an audience. And I've seen so many people get confused. They're focused too much on the audience and not on the customer, which is the actual advertiser. The advertisers are the ones that are paying you. So you're gathering an audience, but your ultimate customer is the advertiser, and you really need to focus on them. You definitely want, price is what you pay, value is what you get. Another one of those MBA TV things. And you really want to focus on creating more value than it's costing them. Overall, in my experience, one of the best ways to monetize, if you can accomplish this, it would be through subscription revenue. It's just having a recurring amount of cash coming into your business on a regular basis is an extremely powerful way to monetize your business model. But fundamentally, there's a lot of different business models out there, but you need to make sure that it's aligned. I've seen some people, they focus on the cost per downloading an app, but then they don't realize that once that app has been deployed out in the wild, they have a lot of care and feeding, a lot of maintenance expenses they need to keep that app running. They've got to issue updates and so on, and they don't have a way to get more money from the user for that. So they're kind of stuck with this deployed software that they have to support and maintain, but they don't have any way to have revenue to come back to them. So that's an example of where, if you can establish more of a subscription model, you'll be better off in the long run.
I think that a lot of developers who have a diversified model end up being a bit more successful. The ones that don't just say, I'm going to take a paid approach, or I'm going to take a subscription approach, or what have you. They think about, 3 different ways that they could make money off of, users being an audience, so they will end up making money off of advertisers, or how do they actually get the end users to make purchases within the application or buy against their platform as a whole. I think when you have 2 different or 3 different types of revenue, that's really one of the key factors that makes developers successful in monetizing. And one thing that I advise all developers to think about is monetization isn't just one of those things that's an afterthought. It's part of the design process. So you mentioned, thinking about costs up front and measuring it against the projections there. But how does monetization fit into the actual user experience and design of your applications? That's so critical to being successful on the revenue side.
We've tried everything. everything from a paid app to a freemium app that has in-app purchases for single transactions, to subscriptions, to single sponsors, to running ad networks, to what I would call sort of off-app transactions. So maybe taking a transaction on the web and then you authenticate within the app, which is a great way to save on the Apple VIG, the 30% VIG. To one other thing I think that people should think of in monetization, if you could get users to do it, is capturing some personal information about the user. So capturing their email address. There may be, we market a lot of other products to people. If you can get them to opt into that, you could probably assign a value to that. To do that, though you probably need to give something to the user if you're going to get that information. And one thing that we're going to start soon is to try to do physical purchases. So, I think from a tablet too is interesting when you talk, is that you have that extra hand free, since most people are in a lean back environment when they're using their tablet, as opposed to a phone, where if you pull out a phone, you can't really type in a credit card at the same time. Where a tablet, you're likely to be sitting down, you can do that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting point around the sort of the context factors, as it were. Should we be monetizing exactly the same way for the tablet as a smartphone, for a native app as an HTML5 app, in one country versus another country? Do you guys think actively about that? Are you kind of adapting the monetization approach based on the context that you think the service or the app is going to be in?
Well, I think someone, forget which one of my colleagues here made the point, but that mix of revenue streams is particularly important when you're dealing in those different environments. And so one of the so take an example in geography. If you look, say, the rate of in-app monetization, so purchases of either content or unlocks or other sorts of in-app purchases in the U.S. versus China. China is starting to generate enormous amounts of daily active users, but their monetization rate is extremely low. And so you're going to need, so unless you want to just subsidize their use of your application with your servers, et cetera, you're going to need some other revenue stream to monetize them and support that user base. And that's going to be advertising. That's going to be incentivized purchases of perhaps other people's content. And so as you can sort of weave together these different revenue streams, they're all going to they're going to be very important as you look at the iOS. In my case, we're mainly iOS, but certainly the same goes for Android tablets. It's a global business, and the same monetization strategy doesn't necessarily work in every single market. So there's just, you've got to have those different strategies in place.
We've tended to break apps into two different categories: task or utility types of apps and consumption apps. And I think that tablet sort of lends itself to more consumption type of experiences. And if you look at the metrics, I saw one yesterday that people are averaging 7 hours of use on tablet. It's reaching, it's about 2 hours short of PC levels. So I think, in those environments, tablet seems to be very much used in prime time hours. So you're getting along, you have that person's engagement. You could get somebody for 45 minutes. So there's a lot you can do there as opposed to a phone. Where, if you have somebody on a phone for more than 10 seconds, they could probably be doing that on a tablet too. So there's, unless it's maybe one of the really, addictive type of games thing that's optimized for the phone. So I think, that tasked consumption model, and sometimes they go back and forth, and I think that's something that when you build a universal binary, need to take those into consideration when you build it, so that there may be bringing something else to the fore on the phone. What we've done some geo-referencing things, so that we gave away little park stamps, digital stamps, when you went to a national park, and you either paid for it and you got some premium content about where to take best pictures in the park, or you crossed a geofence, you crossed the longitude, latitude of Shenandoah National Park, and you earned that by the virtue of doing that. So those types of things, I think. The geofencing is probably a little bit more, but on ad networking, it's huge too. We've done that too, is people outside the U.S., show them different ads than people inside the U.S.
And I mean, in other countries, cultures, the advertising message is just so different, and the laws are different about what's permissible, and users respond differently to ads throughout different countries of the world. So geography it totally depends on where you're targeting.
Yeah, one of the emerging differences, and this goes back to sort of an old vendetta, sort of jealousy I've had of television, and how, to me, it's always, and I know this is a bit naive, but these TV guys seem to get away with charging for millions of dollars for their ad inventory, and there's no direct link. I mean, the early days of .com, I was working at a content site, and we were getting beat over the head over our CPM count. Oh, was it really 1,000 impressions or not? And people were nickel and diming us on that. And if you're an advertiser, I'm sorry, but but really. What I've started to come across with tablets in particular is that they're often part of a multi-screen experience. And a lot of times, I think there's a lot more value from the impression, the eyeballs that you're attracting to see a message. So say you have an advertising campaign, and maybe you're used to paying cost per click or cost per acquisition. But a lot of times, what might have actually triggered or motivated the user to transact with you will happen on a different screen. The tablet might be the one they ultimately end up transacting with you on, but there's value to the fact that they saw that impression on another device, maybe on the TV, maybe on a desktop, maybe on a mobile, or more mobile than a tablet. But so I think that from a monetization perspective, there is a lot of value to even just getting the impressions. Just reinforcing your value proposition to the user, I think is coming back and is starting to have some value. Now, I mean, it's hard to track, oh, did they see it here or did they see it there? But I think there's some untapped value there that advertisers are getting for free, and I think if there's a way to sell that to them, there's an additional monetization opportunity.
Yeah, and I think you hit on the main challenge there, which is sort of tracking, but probably most people in this room are kind of thinking, yeah, that sounds like a luxury, I have to build an app that stands by itself. And maybe they're even making choices between, do I go for the Android tablet, do I go just for iPad, do I build a universal app, do I bother with the Kindle Fire, kind of all those things. So maybe we should just get a quick poll here to sort of see what your sort of opinions are. Do you think that, number one, overall iPad apps actually monetize potentially better than iPhone apps, or do you swing for iPhone? Quick vote. Who thinks that the iPad apps generally monetize better than iPhone?
I would say that just because our experience with subscriptions, and as John mentioned earlier, that's the golden goose is subscriptions, getting people to pay while you're sleeping.
And I would say it monetizes differently. And so we have two titles. We have the same title. One, it's not a universal build. It's got an iPad specific version and an iPhone specific version. On the iPad, we can achieve for the sort of standard in-app unlock, the full game purchase, we can achieve a higher price point, and it converts at a higher level. But the consumables that the game has, so the sort of the Smurf berries essentially that are being fed into the game, the iPhone version blows away the iPad version. So two very different types of in-app purchase. And sort of, I think, Drew, what you had said, it's more, the iPad sort of has a different experience, maybe a different audience as well, right? Perhaps a much different audience. The best news for game developers, in my view, wasn't the iPhone 5. It was the iPod Touch. What is it, the 5? I get a calling it the 5.
It replaced the Nintendo DS.
Right. And the best day, if you go back for the best day ever for most people in the iOS business was Christmas Day 2009, because the iPod Touch 3rd Gen came out in the perfect time. It was really a good device, and they sold tons of those. And so Christmas Day, if you look at anybody's data who's been in business for a while, that'll be maybe their top day ever.
Do you think Apple will get the iPad mini out for this Christmas? Hit or miss?
Is there an official word?
There's not, but the time would be nice. So back to my original question, in terms of iPad monetization versus the phone.
I've personally been surprised at the amount of transactions that I've seen, and the variety of transactions I've seen on tablets. In the early days of mobile commerce, a lot of the stuff we were talking about was, how can we make this more like regular online commerce and get people transacting on mobile devices? Well, it turned out in a lot of the work that I was doing, the mobile devices were better at augmenting or getting an assist on the transaction. So it could be somebody was in a Best Buy and they wanted to figure out which DVD player they wanted to buy. They would turn to their iPhone to look up product reviews, and ultimately that would help facilitate them making a purchase decision. So there is some value to that, but there's no way anyone on that iPhone content site is getting any credit or value out of that. But increasingly, if someone uses their iPhone to try to figure out which restaurant to go to, there may be a way to monetize that or not, but it's kind of assisting the transaction behavior. Whereas on the tablets, I've definitely seen a lot more purchase transactions being executed on device.
I remember when the Kindle Fire came out for the first time last year as well, there were some initial statistics which said that was actually monetizing really, really well. And then maybe that's dropped off now. Did anybody in the group have any experiences with that at the time?
Yeah, we did. We launched, we got a magazine up there, and it wasn't interactive even on the Kindle Fire. It was just a print replica. We saw a huge jump last December. I think it came out the end of November. It shipped. So we saw a huge jump through December and January because they had a lot of 14-day trials for magazines, and then they converted. After that, dropped off. So, we'll see. They just launched the new one, whether it'll take up again this year. But I think, that some people were reporting that they had about almost close to a $400 ARPU for those devices because people were buying books and toilets and, everything else.
It's nice. Premium toilets.
Yeah, premium toilets. And I think, from an advertising perspective, we still see advertisers that want to make targeting buys for that device because they're trying to drive downloads of apps from the Amazon App Store or just the Android store in general, and they're trying to drive purchases of their content that are made specifically for the Kindle Fire.
Absolutely. So actually, let's use that as a segue then into sort of back to the first side of the equation, as it were, which was kind of the cost side that we talked about. And Chris, you're on the advertising side, so you probably also know quite a bit about user acquisition and the challenges there. So let's have a talk about how easy that is, what kind of costs are involved in that right now, and whether that affects kind of your ability to be profitable with an application or a site on a tablet.
I think there are definitely advertisers that are successful in acquiring users by buying advertising on both phones and tablets, and it's a successful model for them. There's no doubt. But I think it totally varies on who your user base is, who is your audience for your application. And I was thinking about this just from a personal perspective. I do often download apps that I see advertised to me. Sometimes that's on my device. Sometimes it's in a magazine that someone has just created a really good advertisement in a magazine, and I say, oh, that looks like an amazing app. So I guess it all depends on who the audience is at the time.
Makes sense.
For us, I look at it at different cycles. At the launch cycle, we can almost attribute about 80% of the downloads to Apple. If we get an app promoted, and depending on the top carousel and then a brick below and then maybe an educate or whatever category you're in, you can almost predict sort of that. So,
and do you have any secrets on how to get your app promoted for the?
Well, yeah, when they announce iOS 6 or in the next case iOS 7, pay attention and pick a few things that highlight their device. So iOS 6, they did a lot of Facebook sharing or their new maps things. If you do something in your app that highlights their device, and so this new one, it's to me, besides the screen size, it's all about the camera. If you're leveraging something there, you're much more likely. They tell us that all the time. If you do something that, when the Retina optimization came out, we got caught a little flat-footed because we had some apps that were just about to launch, and to go back and Retina optimize some of our content, we couldn't do it fast enough, so we didn't get promoted where other apps we could have. So I think that's key. Apple can get you to the top of the category, they can't keep you there. So once you're, the success we've had there, it does create a virtuous cycle that once you're in the top of a category, your discoverability, because search stinks so much in the App Store, that creates a virtuous cycle for you. But that's based on good reviews and having a good game or whatever product you have. And I think we haven't had success on buying a lot of paid media, but a lot of the apps that we've tried to do it have been under that sort of $3 or $4 thing. So it's kind of tough for apps that are lower priced. But we're very hopeful for iOS 6, which is when you can buy a new app within an app without going to the App Store. So, the cross-promotion of apps, I think you won't take the user out of that user experience. So now you can buy Talking Tom, Talking Gina, and, all the other animals while staying in Talking Tom.
Sorry, I didn't know that.
I think I would echo Drew's comments on Apple promotion and focusing hard on what the new features in, say, a new iOS release or a new device are, and really trying to show that device off. That's what gets Apple's attention, and has in our experience as well. I would say from a game maker perspective, we really try to laser focus in on our lifetime customer value. And that is usually disappointing because it's not very high for casual game makers like ourselves. So that means you've got to focus on some other things. We're not the type of, most of our games, not all, but most, aren't the type of games where we can go out and spend $250 for an install, which is what you'll spend on typically for in one of the either whether you're buying clicks or whether you're buying installs, verified installs. You're going to spend $250 on a high quality install, not an incentivized one, but a high quality one. So vast majority of games can't even approach that level of lifetime customer value, so you've got to do other things in terms of acquiring those users cost effectively. Apple promotions, there's nothing better. It's just magically heals all wounds. It's just the sun shines brighter for those 2 weeks. I mean, it's just great. The other thing you've got to do is focus on your rating. Right, really focus on your rating in terms of making sure your particular application is very high quality. And don't settle for anything less than a 4-star rating. If it's got a 3.5-star rating, do everything you can to get it to 4. 4.5 is ideal. 5 is really good. But just don't ever let your rating fall below those marks. We've seen it. We've worked really hard to make sure all of our sort of active products have 4.5-star ratings, and you've really got to focus in on that. And the way to do that is, without giving away too many secrets, it's make sure you have a really good app, and then when you've got a user who's really engaged with your app, ask them to rate it, and then you'll find they'll give it 5 stars when you, hey, could you go to the App Store and rate our game for us? And so that's that works very well. And so focus on your rating. And then in cross-promotion within app, it's so much cheaper to sell your other app to existing customer. iOS 6 is going to help that. But really, in the early days, we did not do a good job of cross-promoting our own apps. And now, and we really, about a year and a half ago, we really focused in on making that experience really good for our users, and that made a huge difference. And so I would say those things. Focus in on that cross-promotion experience, focus in on that rating.
Interesting. And have you ever been tempted, just for you, David, have you ever been tempted by the drug of the very cheap installs and what that can potentially do for your ranking?
All the time. I have a problem. I need to seek help. But it is true that you can go out and purchase installs, and if you have a really low lifetime customer value because you're making a casual game, and I'm really speaking, just to be clear, I'm really speaking in the realm of free games. Advertising for paid games, I think as Drew was saying, is just a great formula for losing money. It just does. They just do not convert on device paid to. You need to advertise to that free title and then convert the user once you have them there. You want that, get that, either it's a numerator or denominator. You want to get that really big and then focus on those conversion stats. And so that being said, incentivize installs or paying for those installs just to drive ranking, that's really still today where you can get your cheapest sort of ranking boost. And if you have other aspects of your title correct, you got a good icon, you got a good description, you got a good rating, then in many cases that'll make sense. Doesn't make sense universally.
What conversion rate do you guys target? Does it depend on
it goes in, yeah. There's an old, when we first got into the game business, some people who really knew the game business really well said, if you're really, really good, 2% of your people will pay you money. So 2% of your free users will convert if you're really good. If you tear apart Zynga's filings, you'll see they're at like 1.5% of payers, etc. The key is, those people who convert, if they can only spend $1.99, that's a problem. You want them to just be able to spend, like the social people want someone to be able to spend, and I laughed when I first heard this, but it's correct. They want them to spend $1,000 in one of their games. So one of their, as the term goes, whales, one of the whales should be able to spend $1,000. So that's going to be your whale, and then you'll go through the sharks and the guppies, minnows, etc. And so you get that overall lifetime value up that way. But 2% of your people will convert, but you want them to be able to spend more than $1.99 on content, because those are the two people who really engage with your application.
I wanted to just go back to the earlier point. I think one of the cheapest ways to acquire users is actually just to update the images in your app. I still see images that are not optimized for a Retina display, and Apple loves good design. If you have a very clean, simple, pretty UI design in your application, that will increase the likelihood that you're going to get picked out by an Apple employee that says, hey, check out this app, it's really awesome, and then feature it on the iTunes store. And that's really how it happens. They use the apps themselves, and then they talk to the guy who does the iTunes app promotions on the store, and they say, hey, look at this app, it's pretty cool. And he says, yeah, that it is.
Huh. All right, makes sense. All right, we're starting to run out of time, so we're just going to finish up with a quick fire round where I'm going to ask a series of questions, and I just want our panelists to answer with 1 or 2 words, as short as possible. So, number 1, if presuming you're doing a paid app, what is the best price point for a paid tablet app?
$2.99.
$1.99.
I'm going to go with $0 and try to turn them into a subscriber.
Free, and then also a $2.99. Maybe there's 2 versions.
All right. Best country outside the US for monetization?
Japan.
Germany.
UK.
Thank you. Yep.
My experience is a bit old, but it is close between the UK and Japan and South Korea.
Okay, example of an app with a very creative monetization plan. Amazon Prime.
I think this died. Yeah, there's one called Sign Easy. They let you sign PDFs, and I threw money at them to let me sign unlimited PDFs without having to print and scan.
In the media category, I would put 60 Minutes. It's an entertainment app, and it's unusual for them is it's a single price point, but you get the 60 Minutes shows updated on a weekly basis. So it's interesting to see how they're going to, instead of making that subscription, it's just a one purchase, but the content keeps updating every week.
That's a good question. It's tough to say, only because as soon as a good one comes out there, 60 people copy it within 24 hours.
You can pass if you want. I have one final question then. So, what product or service on a tablet would you be willing to pay $100 or more for?
Well, back to my earlier thing, since I spent $320 for books already this year, I would go for a subscription to books for $100. But and I did notice that they've launched it, but they're trying to reintroduce the old Charles Dickens serials, but they're from authors that nobody knows about. So I would need, I'd want the front list titles. I'd want,
All right. Anybody else willing to pay $100?
I would pay $100 for a subscription to books. Absolutely.
Yeah, I spend. I'm not typical, but I spend almost $600 a month just for the data plans for my mobile devices. So I'm not a good target, but I mean, I it's not like I have an Amazon Prime habit either. It's more of an Amazon Prime problem, especially around the holidays. So I'm spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars a week through the tablet.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate your time. We have 1 minute for questions, or else we'll leave it here. Yep, a question over there. Just shout.
So I made a free game, a web game called Do or Die, and today a publisher called me, asked me to license it and publish it. Has anything done that before, and what kind of money is involved in that?
This is a question about licensing an app and how much money you can make from it.
Yeah, that's a difficult question without seeing the game. And what platform do they want to license it for? iOS, and it's a web game, and let's chat after. That's probably a more involved answer. Yeah.
So the question about licensing a game, as someone that's done that before, I mean, typically what we'll do is do a revenue split. So, you're looking at a percentage of net Apple sales. So the more you can get. The question really for them, though, for you, is how good are they at getting downloads, right? Because if it's going to be released under their name or whatever, they're going to be driving the downloads. So you're not going to get any money in your pocket if they can't drive downloads.
Okay, well, thanks very much for listening, folks. That's all. Oh, one question. Sorry.
I was thinking, when we talk about mobile devices, especially tablets, is there no hybrid monetization model, like, just for example, it's a business process management application. You have a very small application which is available for free, and then you become a service provider to your customer when they say we want to use it and implement it for 100 employees in our organization. Because I've never seen that sort of a model as yet. Have you guys ever explored such a model? And if not,
Okay, yeah, we'll take that one offline, but thank you very much. Great question.
thank you.